Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Our show is brought to you by Vuori. I have an unhealthy amount of joggers, but Vuori's performance joggers, they take the cake as the softest, most comfortable pants that I can work out in, lounge in, and honestly, even go out in public wearing. Check out the description below for 20% off of your first purchase. On today's show, we have Adrian Conway and Jason Croxon here to discuss who they think will fare better at the games, the vets, or the rookies. Adrian, we look at this list of athletes this year. Obviously, there are way more veterans at the games, but how do we put those teenage games athletes like the Emma Lawsons and the Dallin Peppers? How do they factor in the mix when we're talking about vets versus rookies?
Well, this conversation obviously always seems like it's a given, right? Like, oh, well, the veterans, they're going to run away with it. They have the experience. They have so many different things that line in their favor. But with this rookie class specifically, we're seeing a really unique combination of previous games experience in the teen division, or even for teams when we consider someone like Christine Kohlenbrander, who's going to come on the scene pretty strong this year, at least in my assumption, versus people in the past of the sport and the history where they've often punched their ticket and have never even seen the stadium before, the Coliseum and inside of it, or even on the field, unless they happen to be sitting in the stands. So with this year, I think we have to make a few considerations of the fact that the athletes are a bit more familiar with the environment. They're familiar with the process of checking in and seeing all of their peers face to face for some of them the first time, and the butterflies that can bring. And of course, even seeing some of the people that are the head judges and all these different new aspects of competition for them. For many of the athletes that come in with the previous experience this year, that they don't have that same obstacle. And so I believe that there's a lot of the newbies, particularly in this class. And it's ironic, of course, that we recently have seen the launch of, next gen take over, and we get to kind of watch that and see what happens in that documentary. But I really believe that they're going to have an opportunity more this year than in the past to really come and compete for several spots that could fall within the top 10 of the CrossFit Games this year.
So, Adrian, do you think that this is the turning year where things shake up a little bit when we're looking at the leaderboard and seeing more of those rookies a little bit higher than previous years?
Well, we're without a few daughters this year that we're used to seeing, and it becomes, that argument or that statement is loaded. There's a lot of factors that tie into that, but I do believe that we are seeing a transition of faces where the spectrum of athletes that have had an opportunity. I came into the sport, and I think many in my age division and or experience level came into the sport as previous athletes. We had specialties, right? And then we spent our CrossFit career nullifying that specialty and trying to bring up our weaknesses as best we could, versus these young individuals are literally being birthed into the CrossFit space because mom and dad were doing it at a gym, and they come in so much more well-rounded. And I do believe that we're seeing a turnover. I won't say that the top level, the top three, I can't, and I'm not going to give any podium picks yet or anything like that. But I will say that I believe that the podium and the way that it shifts, it'll still take a couple years to solidify the new transition or the next gen specifically. But they're coming to probably kick down the door as aggressively as they can, because that's where their eyes are. And I think that's the difference too, is that their goals are to come and compete, not just to come and show up.
Jason, when we're looking at the season so far and just the way that we've gotten to this stage and some of the rookies, quote unquote, have qualified, do you think, kind of off of Adrian's point, that growing up with CrossFit sets these rookies up better than maybe somebody who had a basketball background, football, track, those types of things?
It's interesting. I do, but then I've got an athlete in mind that is very interesting when we talk about a rookie. 100% that I think the fact that many have been to the games could be a good thing for them, because they've got that experience, albeit in the teen division. I do wonder how that factors into kind of the mental space that you're in. When I think back to like Brent Fikowski's comments at the press conference, where you were always the top in your at your box. You were the best at any workout you went to when you did local comps. Then you go to the games, and your wheelhouse workout, you finish middle of the pack. And I wonder how much that's kind of how much effect that has on you when it wasn't just any workout, but it was when you were at the games as a teen that you were finishing top of the pack, and now you're middle of the pack. Like, how does that affect you mentally? But I'm really interested by Elisa Fuliano, because
Mm-hmm.
this was only her second year doing the Open. She's only been doing CrossFit for about 3 years, and she has a background in pole vault and track and gymnastics, I think. So that's interesting, because there I think we're going to have that comparison where you're going to see athletes that have come up through the teen division, a lot of experience. They've been doing CrossFit, almost as soon as they could walk, it seems. And then you're going to have somebody that was good at sport and has moved into CrossFit, which is kind of what we used to see was the norm. So I'm really interested now that we kind of actually get a chance to compare these two backgrounds and see how they stack up at the biggest event of the year.
Do you have any, like, if you had to place money on it right now, do you think that the athletes with this more diverse background would fare better? Or do you think like just growing up only having CrossFit would actually be lead them to more success on a leaderboard if that's what we're talking about?
I wonder. I would say at a semi-final, the background in CrossFit is going to be the most important thing. At the games, the fact that there are many unknown elements that get thrown in, that kind of natural athleticism and being able to adapt and handle an object you've never seen before, or a kind of event you've never faced before, can at times play in the favor of someone that has a more rounded sporting background. That being said, particularly like on the men's field, you look at like Dallin Pepper, Tudor Magda, well, they're absolutely incredible. So they'll probably do really well because of the background they have in CrossFit.
Okay, so Adrian, let's talk about some of these athletes. You're not going to give your podium picks yet, and we won't get specific into that. But when we're looking at the top 10 or even the top 5 on both the men's and the women's side, are there specific athletes that are rookies that you have in mind that will be sneaking into some of these athletes that have so much games experience?
Yes, it's really hard to think if any of them will have that true opportunity to punch their ticket into a top 5 or a top 10 type scenario, but I think they have the potential. And a lot of this is contingent upon the aspects that we legitimately were just talking about. How do they respond to the unknown? How do they respond when, I really thought that was going to be a good workout for me, and instead I got 12th? And how well do they honestly adapt to negativity, right? Like the temperatures are going to be hot. The water might feel unfamiliar. Again, there's a list of things that we could go on and on with, which I can always replay in my mind. My first experiences on the competition floor and how it felt and what I had to tell myself and the stories I had to navigate. But I believe, I've been very familiar with this young man for many years. So on the men's side, I'd have to say Dallin Pepper is one that I really believe has a true shot. Just over the scope, in my mind, I can dream up a plethora of tests with 13 to 15 events and the caliber of gentlemen that are showing up. I believe that if he just does what he can and doesn't need to do anything spectacular, he's going to end up being one of the fitter men in the field because of his well-roundedness. And obviously that's contingent that he gets to show up healthy and in one piece, which that's hard for all of us to do when you're grinding all summer to be the best that you can. And then if I could give you guys a name on the women's side, there are a few specifically. Emma Lawson stands out tremendously to me because of what I saw her do firsthand when I got to commentate in Canada at the Atlas Games. Her composure, again, we know that she is one that does have some previous experience similar to Dallin. And I think that, again, similar to Dallin, her skill set is so well-rounded that if she just simply handles business the way that I know that she can, without any home runs necessarily, without knocking anything out of the park, I think she'll do really, really well there at the CrossFit Games.
Jason, do you have any other names that come to mind that you think could potentially squeeze in the top 5 or even just top 10?
I'm really interested to see what Alex Gazan can do. She seems very impressive, incredibly strong, and she's had that kind of training environment. She's got to go against some of the the best athletes in the sport. So I'm interested to see what she can do. I think with the rookies, your heart plays a big part where you're kind of like, oh, I really hope they do well, but then your brain is telling you but look who you're going up against, and you know that the veterans, it's a really stacked field. So, but yeah, I mean, coming from England, I suppose I'm supposed to say Lucy Campbell as well, because otherwise people will be very angry. So, and of course, Lucy Campbell, everybody, we're looking to see what she can do as well.
Are there any, this question is for both of you. Are there any negative or downsides that a veteran would face that maybe a rookie wouldn't have to deal with quite yet?
Go ahead.
Looking after their kids is the only thing I can think of. We've got, Pat, Brent, their dad. You get the dad strength. I know that, but you get the stress as well, and that's going to eat into your training. And then, I mean, it's a joke, but actually, I'm a dad, and obviously I can't dedicate as much of my life to training as these guys do, but it takes its toll. So I think that could be a factor. But no, I think I think it's probably more just maybe the conversations that you can't let get in your head when people are talking about these amazing rookies and these people that are coming up in the sport, and oh, this guy's old now, and you're like, actually, he's younger than me. He's not that old. Like, I get it. In CrossFit years, he might seem old, but he's not. And I suppose it's if you start letting those conversations into your head, and you have maybe one bad performance, and that rookie does take you on the workout, like, then how do you recover from that going into the next event?
Adrian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that real life, the older that you get, tends to play more of a role in your, the way that you execute on a week and a weekend. But a lot of these guys at the professional level that they're at, they know how to manage that stuff. But I think one of the biggest drawbacks can just be pressure. And I say that not saying that it's new for these athletes, the men or the women that are showing up, but when you grow your influence and sponsorship becomes more of your flow of income, and you have people that you feel like you are responsible to represent, and that honestly pay your bills, right? Pay your mortgage, support your family. There's an external pressure that starts to feel heavy at times as you battle injury, and you think about like, oh man, this is a good event for me. I really got to get top 3 here. And it's one of those things that a lot of people think they want, but they actually don't know what it is that they're asking for when they say like, oh, well, I want to be a CrossFit Games athlete. You're like, okay, well, that's cool, but do you? And that's really what the veterans are battling through right now. It's letting that type of stuff go. It's really understanding that their best is enough, and being able to be cool with, like we mentioned, hey, if they have a bad event, how do they respond? And we've seen a lot of the vets that are going to show up this year and do really well and take some of those top 3 and top 5 spots. Respond to negativity and how they do it. But each year, I think for some of them, sometimes that we won't call it the crown because we know that's special for Justin and Tia right now. But the level of influence and potential that they have can become relatively heavy to carry. And so I think that's one of the biggest under discussed, obstacles for vets.
Jason, what is your bottom line?
So my bottom line would be, I think we have some incredible rookies this year. I think they're going to perform exceptionally well, and maybe they're some of the best rookies that we've ever had. But I still don't think there's any substitute for experience. And when you look at the veterans in the field, they are still incredibly fit. And so I imagine that the majority of top spots on the leaderboard, both in the men's and women's division, is going to be very familiar faces.
Adrian, what's your bottom line?
My bottom line is the vets got to go get it and take it this year, because this young group of athletes is coming in talented and hungry and with a different kind of experience than we've seen before in the sport, because of the unique circumstance of graduating up through that teen division. So I'm extremely excited. Couldn't be more pumped to watch this rookie class come in. But I know these veterans are going to scratch and claw and fight with all they've got to sustain their dominance on those podiums there at the CrossFit Games in Madison.
Oh, we can't wait to see it. Just a couple weeks away, guys. Adrian, Jason, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.